Welcome back to the podcast. The Rangers are rolling. 5-game winning streak. Things are feeling good. We're keeping up the good vibes. We're here to talk about a bunch of different things, including the ever good news that is Igor, looking like Igor of old following the 2-0 victory against the Flames on Tuesday night. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Stadium Series. Going to talk about some moves that have been made. The power play still struggling, but plenty to get into with the show today. So let's kick it off. Of course, we are joined by New York Post great Larry Brooks and New York Ranger great Brian Boyle. Molly Walker is on her All-Star break this week, so she's going to fully recover from her time off, and I'm sure she'll be back next week offering up some awesome viewpoints from the Stadium Series coming up against the Isles this weekend. But fellas, glad to see everybody here today. And like I mentioned, 5 in a row for the Rangers, looking good. They almost blew things against Chicago over the weekend. Thankfully held on to that one. But the big story in that game was Igor returning. And right off the bat, it looked a little shaky as, of course, an early goal gets by him. And then, people start to wonder, is he back? Is he good? They won the game, came out on Tuesday night. Igor started again, shut them out. How are we feeling about Igor currently? I know it's early. He's coming off of work with Benny. But we'll start with you, Brian. Did
He's
you feel
back.
like Igor? Yeah,
He's back. Yeah,
good.
he's back. Great
Okay,
game against Calgary. That was a great goalie duel.
it was.
Markstrom's back too. He's really back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is a Rangers podcast, so yeah, that's good. That's why I was, that can be my boiler room today. All the Maniac fans, I love you, but you're nuts.
Well, what Igor's game did the other night was quieted all the noise around this goalie situation. There's one goalie situation. It's whether Shesterkin's going to play well enough to get them to the cup. That's it. It's not who's their number one. When is he going to play? You can't take his temperature every single game. You can't be weighing whether Igor is going to play the next game or not, if he gives up a goal or not. He's their number one goalie. He's their franchise goalie. That's the way they're built. And if he's not up to the task, they're not going to win anything. It's important for him to get into a rhythm, for him to play well, for him to be confident. But I don't think, the noise outside has obscured the fact that the Rangers aren't making decisions day by day on who their number one goalie is. They have their number one goalie, and they have a backup who's playing out of his mind, which only benefits the situation. That they didn't have to rush Igor back in the second game because the backup goalie wasn't good enough. They have the luxury of giving him time to work with Benny. And by the way, the Rangers did this with Hank all the time.
Yep.
It was partly because Hank wasn't very good coming off long breaks, but he almost never played the first game back after a break, and sometimes the first two because he was working with Allaire. So again, this is a topic of conversation, but it's not really a relevant topic of conversation. I don't think.
No, that's why Benny gets the big bucks, baby.
Yeah.
The NHL is hard. Playing goalie in the NHL is hard. Being an elite goalie in the NHL is nearly impossible, and he's shown it. So, look, he wasn't as good last year as he was the year before. Well, it's hard to do what he did 2 years ago every year, right? And I just think it's a 1-0 game. He's trying to score a goal. It's pretty he's got his little swagger back.
Yeah. I thought he played with some swagger the other night.
Yeah.
I agree. I thought he played with swagger.
Yeah. All right. So I can't wait to see who we're going to pick on next. Rangers fans. First place Rangers. Who's the problem now?
They are.
You know what though? I have to say that I have the feeling I thought they played very well against Calgary. It was
Calgary was hot.
The Calgary game was a real good game. They both played well.
Yeah.
Two good teams playing well. But and they played well against Tampa. Obviously, they played well against Colorado. Obviously, but sometimes I look at them again and I have the same feeling that I had in October and November and December. Like, they're good, but how good are they? And they're winning these games, but are they good enough to win 16? And this is what I've talked about from the start of the year. That's how I measure them. It's not like, are they playing well in November? Yeah, they're playing
Yeah.
great in November. Are they playing well in February? Yes, they're playing well in February. But is this team going to be able to play well enough in May? And that's what I try, and that's the lens through which I watch their games and their practices and their off days. Because to me, it's kind of like, we know they're a good team.
Mhm.
They've been a good team for a while now. They've been one of the better regular season teams in the league the last couple of years. They went to the conference finals 2 years ago. So obviously they're a good team, but are they good enough? And that's all that anyone cares about. You know, it's been 30 years again. It's been 30 years
Yeah.
after 54. So that's honestly what anyone cares about. It's like, are they going to be good enough to win 16 games in the playoffs?
Let me ask you this, Larry. I think this is maybe concerning to the fans, and this is what concerned me. When you lose games where there's no emotion, you don't really learn anything. You don't see any, you can't really identify your weak spots. You can't really pin down what it is that we're missing, or because throughout the lineup, there's been stretches of great play. And when they're engaged and they're emotional, they play well. And that's why, like, you can look at it a number of ways. I look at it like in the playoffs, they're going to be engaged, right? It's the playoffs. Well, it looked like they weren't against New Jersey last year,
Mhm.
how that thing kind of fell apart.
That's right.
So that worries me a little bit, but you'd
Yeah.
assume, like, hey, they're going to be buzzing for the playoffs. And that's what I expect. They have the ability to get up for games. Peter Laviolette has the ability to light a fire under them and make sure they're motivated. When they have that motivation, they're a really good team. And if they lose games but play well, you can see maybe where their deficiencies are. When there's no emotion or things aren't going well for a stretch of time, like it was for 5 weeks, it just, you see guys get back to the bench. They get back to the bench slow. They sit down, they sulk their shoulders. No one gets mad. No one tries to stir it up. And if one guy does, it's hard to, you can't, it's impossible by yourself. So you need 5, 6, 7 guys to have that. Yeah, all right, let's get it going. And then everyone kind of follows in. But that's like when they're playing
But
structure, that's great.
isn't that a takeaway that maybe
That is.
there's
That's why. I mean, I'm saying, give me some sandpaper on the bottom six.
that's
That's really
exactly
going to play
and,
enough to bring everyone else into it. Like, you don't have a choice. We're going to fight tonight.
right. Well, and I think I think that's an evaluation of their team. Are they, and I would put this under the umbrella of, are they hard enough to play against?
Mhm.
You know, which there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, yeah.
But do they make it difficult on their opponent every night? Do they make it difficult on their opponent for 60 minutes? And I think in order to do that, you have to play with a lot of emotion.
Mhm.
You know, you have to engage all night. And that's always been the question. Are they hard enough to play against as a team? And I don't think they are. Can they elevate? Yes, can they? But I don't think on a day-by-day basis they're a particularly difficult team to play against physically. And I think in the playoffs, the equation from talent to physicality flips, or it becomes it smooths out, where if you're a 70% talent team, you're not going to win.
Right.
I don't think you're going to win. If you need to get it more 50-50, where you can win on the nights where your talent guys are being suppressed. And that's what they're going to have to do.
So then how does that change though, essentially? Because I mean,
Well, there's a trade deadline, right?
right, this is true. But I mean, isn't that part of the character in terms of, I mean, I don't want to put it all on Lavs, but I mean, is that a sense where you got to know what buttons to push on your team in order to get that fire out of them to make them a little stronger in that sense, or is that a players only thing where you have Truba and Kreids and some of the leaders kind of tell the guys, hey, listen, we got to like toughen up here, or we got to take it to the next level. How does that change, Brian, in the locker room?
It's got to come from within each guy. I mean, you have to have that understanding that, talent is great and I can work really hard, but then, I don't know, finding a way to manufacture some adrenaline somehow, even if it's you poke the bear first.
Mm.
Now you have to fight back, piss somebody else off. It might be tough and scary on a different team. There's not a lot of that now, but it's just a way to bring it in emotionally as understanding what's at stake. And everyone, when you all buy in and everyone understands every year the team changes, how much do you really care about one another and what you have this year? Because next year it's going to be different. It always is. There's different guys that leave. You don't know. There's different injuries that happen. If you have something good, everyone understands that. Everyone wants to get the most out of that season. Then you can figure out a way to, I don't know, I wouldn't say manufacture it because it's an understanding, but getting them to understand, the time is right now. It's not, we have some young players on good contracts. They're going to continue to develop. We have this guy signed for a while. We have this. He's only 24. He's only 20. No, it's now. It's right now. And doing it now, like tomorrow, now is what, in their next game on Thursday, whenever, I don't know how this is going to come out. Maybe it comes out tomorrow, but that's when you start. You need to really have this this is how we play. This is our blueprint. It's like tying our skates. We're going to come and we're going to be mad. You're trying to take something from us. It's 2 points. We're not going to let you have it. We have a chip on our shoulder. There's a lot of talent. You have that too. It's like, look at Nate McKinnon. Look at what he plays with.
Right. You know what's interesting to me about the Rangers? Here they are. They're in first place. They've been there essentially all year.
Yeah.
They're one of the top 6, 7, 8 teams in the league, and really none of their top guys are playing at their best. There's so much room for them to grow. For them to so much room for improvement at the top.
Minus bread,
as well as in the bottom, but certainly at the top. I mean, the Zibanejad line rarely scores 5-on-5. I mean, look, they don't give up very much. So it's not like they're, coming off the ice with their heads down, after a minus, after a minus, after a minus. Kreider and Zibanejad actually have the best, have the best goals forward against differential on the team, but they're not driving offense particularly. They're not scoring a lot of goals. The power play is not scoring. Adam Fox is having an okay year. He's been fine, but he's not having a Norris type season. Igor is not having a Vezina type season. So you look at their players, and there's just so much for them to improve their top end, and yet they're still in first place. So but maybe they don't improve. Maybe this is just a year for them. So you can look at it both ways. You can look at it, say, man, when Zibanejad gets going offensively, when Adam picks up his game, when Igor is at his best, they're going to be unbeatable. Or you can say, these guys just, if this is the way they're going to play, how can they win? So, it's the cup half full and the cup 99% empty.
Well, I mean, we're past the halfway mark of the season, so should Ranger fans be looking at the team cup half full, cup half empty? I mean, the half full part is, yeah, they're in first place. They look like they're a lock for the playoffs. Anything can happen, obviously, so you don't want to say that, but there's reasons that you can look at both. And for instance, I was looking at Mika's numbers earlier. In the last 18 games, 2 goals and 10 assists, and it just feels like he's been extremely streaky this year. Brett has carried a lot of the weight, and fully deserving. He's having a fantastic year, but the half empty part is, the other guys aren't really stepping up. So I guess that's where I'm conflicted as a Ranger fan, where I want to believe that this team could turn it on and play to the back of their hockey cards, if you will, come playoff time. But are you half empty, half full on this team right now?
Well, again,
I think
I'm waiting until the trade deadline. Honestly,
Okay.
I'm just waiting until see what their roster is coming out of the trade deadline.
That's fair.
You're getting everything you can out of Troach too, and then you're getting a lot out of Cooley. You're getting a lot out of VC. And you can get more out of, you can get more out of Goodrow, obviously. And there's the way he plays is a certain way. I think come playoff time, that guy's going to be a factor. I just think that there's guys that are going to elevate, and Mika's been sort of streaky throughout his career, so you just kind of hope he elevates too. If he does, though, like, who's beating him? Who's beating him in the first 2 rounds? Like, we'll see whoever comes out of the Atlantic, and then that'll be, maybe. I mean, Carolinas can be good. They're hard to play against, so that's kind of why you want to build up that, you want to callous your brain a little bit and understand that for 40 minutes of a game in the playoffs, it's going to be ugly and you're going to get nothing. And you just think it just needs one shift. And that's a condition you have to put yourself into.
It'll be interesting, and it's going to start. I mean, next week is going to be a very interesting week in my mind because they play the Canadians up first, and then we go to Yankee Stadium and not Yankee Stadium, MetLife Stadium this time around, and they'll be facing the Islanders for the first time this year, which is wild to me that
Bananas.
it's taken this long to face the Isles. It's. I mean, I get why the NHL does it. They want to create the drama down the stretch, especially with your rivalries. But it'll be interesting to see because the Islanders aren't great currently at the moment. So I'm kind of curious to see what that'll be like. But if you look past the Stadium Series game, you got the Isles, then you got the Devils, and then you got the Flyers. So again, more teams in the division where the Rangers kind of have to take advantage and they can really start to pile on the points here and kind of take off. Larry, I know you've been around the team recently. What's the mood feeling like going into the Stadium Series game? Because obviously a lot of fans looking forward to it. Are the players kind of talking about it? They preparing differently? What have you been hearing?
Well, it came up today at practice, but I don't think it's a, I think they're pretty good at keeping the next game in front of them as their focus, and they still have another game to go
Mhm.
against Montreal, who they've had a lot of trouble with over the
Yeah.
last few years. And they have a lot of trouble scoring against Montembeault. Montreal seems to be flying around against them. So I don't think they're particularly thinking about Sunday when they have a game on Thursday. I don't. The outdoor games I've been around. I've covered the four Ranger games. I also covered the original one in Edmonton in
Mhm.
2003 against Montreal, which was just a blast. I mean, the old timers game that day was the feature because you
Mhm.
had the dynasty. Everybody from the dynasty was playing for both dynasties. Lafleur,
Yeah.
Robinson, Shutt, Savard. They were playing for Montreal. Gretzky, Messier, who was an active Ranger, played in the alumni
It's
game.
crazy.
Or
Wow.
so that was the kick. I mean, watching these guys because at that point, 2003, there hadn't been a lot of Legends games. This had
Yeah.
never been done before. So it was the Saturday afternoon they played the Legends game, the two dynasties, and then Saturday night they played the game between Montreal and the Oilers, which was just frigid. It was cold. But I love it. I listen. I think all the players enjoy it. Maybe playing in the game isn't particularly enjoyable, but I think the buildup is you skate with your family. I think the NHL does its special events really well.
Yeah. I agree.
They do it for it translates for the fans. I think it translates for the players. So I'm sure when once Thursday night is passed, they skate there on Friday afternoon practice. So I'll be everybody enjoys it. Everybody looks forward to it.
Did you have any special lead ups going into? I know we talked about the Winter Classic, but and we'll talk a little bit more about your time playing in the Yankee Stadium series, Brian. Do you remember the lead up going into those games? If there was anything, I mean, the team was in a very different position than they were, currently now, and but was anything put into your guys' heads like leading into that series with the Devils and Islanders?
Yeah, we were. I mean, we were a good team. We were. I think we were building back towards where we wanted to be. We had a coaching change, but
Yeah.
you get new gear, new jerseys, new swag. We'd done it. Recently before that, we played in the Winter Classic in Philly, so it was another chance for people to come in. Having it in New York, even though we were the visiting team, was really cool, and having people train up to Yankee Stadium was really really cool. Seeing them afterwards, and then going back to the city and getting to spend some time with friends and family, the ones that missed the Philly one,
Mhm.
in the year before. So it was, but then it was like two games in a row. The second one was cold. It was kind of like, let's get back inside here a little bit.
Right.
But
Well,
we
you
won
well
them
you
both.
didn't. Right. You didn't practice the second time outside. You
Yeah,
went for the
really.
one practice before the Devils game and
Yeah, we're good.
didn't need the second outdoor practice. But
Because then you think
the
about
game
the
in Philly was
logistics.
the game in Philly was a great game.
That
What a
was,
great game
yeah.
it was.
That was wild. There was a lot that went on in that game. That was really cool. It was fun. Really fun.
Let's
Especially the fact that the NHL and NBC tried to fix it.
yeah.
They wanted a shootout or overtime pretty badly, didn't they?
How
Torts
much
comes
did
on
Torts
his
get
press
fined for that
conference
one?
afterwards. So it's like, I don't know if seems like there might have been something going on with NBC and the league. It's like, and so he gets fined. And the
It was a
next day,
phantom penalty shot.
It was. I mean, listen.
they called a penalty shot with like
It
20
was a
seconds.
phantom call.
That was ridiculous. And there were some calls made in the final 10 minutes of that game that were outrageous,
A little
just outrageous.
questionable.
I was
And
mad, but I was like, I'm gonna play a lot. This is cool to kill these penalties, but like, what's going on here?
yeah. It was
Yeah, it
fixed.
was wild.
It's funny because this was actually a conversation I had with another fan of the Rangers, and we were talking about the 4 outdoor games. And mind you, who started all 4 of those? Henrik Lundqvist, undefeated 4-0. We were kind of ranking like where those games kind of fell between the 2 Yankee Stadium ones, the Philly game, and then the one at Citi Field against the Sabres. And it's just the other 3 just all lack in comparison to the Philly game. And it's just like I know like the shootout manufactured, it felt manufactured, that they were trying to make that drama. But I'm just curious, like, do you guys think the outdoor games is starting to, the novelty is wearing off a little bit? Because I mean, there's still very much excitement, and the Winter Classic's back at Wrigley next year. But are there any other places you'd rather see than like an outdoor stadium like that?
Well, the novelty is worn off, but fans
tons of
love
fun.
it. Yeah, and fans love it. It may not have the national, it may not have the, make the national imprint that it did at the start, but who cares? I mean, you bring it, fans love it. It's great for for the city that's hosting it. I mean, I don't think they, you can do one every couple of years, I think. In certain cities, I mean, you're not going to have trouble selling tickets in New York if they do this every 2 or 3 years. I do think it's a little more special when it is the Winter Classic, though, because it's standalone.
Yes, definitely agree.
It's a little more special. But the Sunday afternoon game when the Rangers played the Devils at the stadium, fans were having a great time. The funny part about the last one they played at Citi Field against Buffalo, they won in overtime. It turned out to be the high point of their season because they were going along, on their normal, this is a team, that had success for the 5 or 6 years before, and they were going on, and they were kind of, I think they were 21-13 and whatever ties after, or not ties, shootout losses or overtime losses. And then they started to lose, and a month later, the team was ended. It like the letter came out, and but the Winter Classic victory against Buffalo was the high point of that season. It was freezing that day too. It was cold that day.
I was gonna say I was at that game too, and I couldn't watch the end of like the second period. I had to go inside and stand because it was brutal. I just remember that day just being rough. But
real quick, dude, hold on.
Citi Field press box is kind of underneath. It's back. It's back, and there are windows that they're either you can open or they're closed. And I don't love it during the baseball season. I would rather be outside.
Open, yes, agree.
But it worked pretty well on January 2nd.
You're not complaining about the windows being closed then, no?
It was pretty good that day.
Nice. No, I was just saying that Philly one was the first one for the Rangers, right? So then you had the 24/7 and the build up, and you can't do that.
No,
every year. There was a lot that went into that. There was a lot of like players sacrificing it. And we, again, listen, I wouldn't change a thing. It was awesome. It was so much fun. Even that whole thing, we really built that thing up. And yeah, it's kind of a tick down on these stadium series, and it's try to spread it around so everyone can play outdoors for their fans and whatnot. So I love it. It's like an all-star game where people come out, kids love it. They sell a bunch of merch.
Yeah.
I've got to work it this year in Seattle. I was freezing and it wasn't even that cold, but I'm soft. And I brought home a bunch of swag for my kids and they wear it all the time. They love it. So it's a really cool thing that they do.
I think, dare I say that it's better than the All-Star game because it's an actual game.
Well,
It
it's a real,
means
yeah, come
right,
on.
exactly. But I mean,
Depends on
I
what you're
see.
looking for.
Right. I get the appeal in both. You could see the stars, at the All-Star game, but nothing matches game-like intensity. Well, Larry, that was actually a great segment or great transition because we're going to go into the next segment. We're talking about those two Yankee Stadium series games. And there was some drama going on there, especially with the captain at the time, Ryan Callahan. So we're going to get into that coming up next on the podcast. Back on the Up in the Blue Seats podcast. And yeah, the theme this week is we're talking about the Stadium Series. Big game against the Islanders at Yankee Stadium on Sunday, 3 o'clock. Hopefully the sun's not affecting things. I know we've had that problem a couple times with these outdoor games. But we're going to reminisce about the Yankee Stadium Series where the Rangers defeated the Devils in the first game and then defeated the Islanders, which is what we hope the same result is this Sunday. That first game, Brian, and both games had different storylines into it, and I'm just curious what you recall, Larry. Same thing. What the build up. The Devils game, I remember this was Martin Brodeur's kind of like transition into he's taking the backups role and whatnot.
Mhm.
And they started him in that game, and you guys went down big, but then came back, and I believe you sent him to the bench. What do you remember about that Devils game? Anything come to mind specifically?
I remember Corey Schneider coming in cold in an outdoor game, having to face Derek Stepan on a penalty shot, and Steps snapped one, fire down, cheese. And I was just like, oh, because, and I could be wrong. I remembered Corey being their number one. Like, I'm like, why won't they give him the net? And I know why they wouldn't give him the
Right.
net, but they should have given him the net. And they didn't. And then they did. And it was like, I think, what was a 7-3 finish?
It was, yeah.
And I just remember what else do I remember? Hitting Volchenkov, who had a hard time knocking over in my career. And I just really wanted to get him. And I got him. I got a penalty for it.
Did
I
you
got like an
really?
interference penalty. This guy was impossible to knock over. He was a refrigerator.
Yeah.
He looked like he was kind of half concussed half the time he played, but oh man, I was the best. I was right by our bench too. The boys loved it. And then they're like 2 minutes. I was like, what?
Yeah.
But anyways, that was fun. I love that. That's what I remembered. I didn't remember apparently that I don't even really remember the Islanders game that much. I just think like we played them no matter where we played them. They could have been, they stunk most of the time. And they played us so hard. And that was like the beginning of that energy line that they still kind of can trot out now if they want to with Cizikas, Clutterbuck. Actually, I don't know if Clutterbuck was there. I think he was, but they had Cizikas and Martin just running around and causing all sorts of problems. But it was always high intensity, high emotion, and then we took it outside. And I just remember winning, being in the locker room after, checking out the stadium, seeing where everybody kind of did their thing, visiting clubhouse, all that, whatnot. We can say clubhouse on this podcast, Andrew.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
I always loved that stuff because I love baseball and I love, just being in different places. It was knowing full well, like knowing that this was special and different, trying to take it all in.
Well, I would have been interested to see if you were in the Yankees.
Yeah.
On road team.
Who would have taken Jeter's spot? Who would have taken Mariano's spot? I
would have put a folding chair up, sat by myself somewhere outside.
Yeah, like the visiting clubhouses, are pretty generic. Or
perfect. I loved it.
They're pretty generic, but yeah, no, the Brodeur was the storyline going into the game because you're right. He was kind of transitioning. Schneider had kind of taken over the number one spot, but they thought it would be disrespectful to have Marty sit. And I actually, I agree. I think they. I mean, I think you. And I don't, Marty was embarrassed by it. I know he thought, look, I don't want to be trotted out there like an ornament, but still, you're playing outdoors for the first time. It's the first time in franchise history you're playing at Yankee Stadium against the Rangers. You're not sitting Brodeur on the bench. You're not. And he, he Devils went up 3-1, I know, and then I think he scored 4 or 5 in the second
4
period.
unanswered goals. You guys lit him up.
Yeah, and never was there a more miserable person on the bench than Brutor in the third period. But yeah,
Never happened.
Corey Schneider facing a penalty shot. It's like after sitting in the cold 3 hours.
Yeah, hop in, bud.
Yeah,
he laughs about it now. It's pretty.
yeah, and the Islander game was kind of just, it was. It came like it played Sunday afternoon, and the Islander game was Wednesday. There was no break in the routine. You just skated at home, and really the storyline going into that game, the second game, was the contract negotiations that were breaking down with Callahan, and it was coming up to the point. The trade deadline was maybe a month away, and it was time for either Callahan to sign an extension or not. And I remember that's what Callahan talked the morning of the Islander game, and there was that's when you got a real sense that it wasn't going to work out. I remember thinking, all year, come on, it's Ryan Callahan.
Us too.
Ryan Callahan. I mean, come on,
Us too. Yeah.
Of course he's going to sign. Of course, but then you saw as the year went on, Vigneault didn't value him the same way that Torts had before. He wasn't even on, a lot of nights he wasn't even on the second power play. So, you could see things begin to shift. But I remember it was in that stretch between the outdoor games where I thought, you know what, I don't think he's staying. I don't think he's going to stay.
When did Girardi sign?
Girardi reached an agreement
before
about a week or so before the deadline, and he was out there too.
Yeah, and this is my memory, and I could be wrong, but I believe he got his deal with trade protection, and they just wouldn't offer it to Cali at all.
Right.
Nothing.
No, that's right.
And Cali's like, what's to say you're not just going to ship me out anyway? And not at that point, as when he would not really tell us, he wouldn't really bring us into it, which is why he's so well revered. The way he handled everything in terms of as a teammate was phenomenal. But that's why. And then he finally said, because we don't know if it's numbers, we don't know anything. We're not going to be like, hey, what are they giving you? It's just kind of like, it'll work out, and he's dealing with enough, so let's not bug him.
Yeah.
He's like, they just won't give me even a no trade, nothing. And I was like, that's kind of not the way they want. I mean, they don't really want you. They don't really want you.
Right.
That's
it was instructive because they gave out no trades like Hez. I mean, honestly, oh, you want a no trade? No trade for you, no trade for you, no trade for you. And then Ryan Callahan, sorry.
Right. That guy.
No trade
the
for you.
The captain of the team.
There was, you can't sign I got it. I got it from kind of both sides, but it was an interesting place to draw the line. That's all. It was just a very interesting case study. But again, I think, and this is just my conjecture. I think that if Torts had still been there, I think they would have given him, because Torts would have said, "Hey, listen, this is a go-to guy for me. This
It's our
is
heartbeat." Yeah,
we need him, and I just don't think that AV, had that kind of evaluation of him as a player. So, I don't know. But I remember thinking that there were two guys who well, actually three, as it went along, that I was surprised didn't stay longer. One was Callahan. I thought he would kind of finish. The other was Stepp. I always thought, like, from the first day, I remember seeing him like in a development camp or something, and I thought that I thought that he was going to be, if not the next captain, then the captain after. I thought he was going to be a captain in the New York Rangers. I saw him staying for a long time, and also McDonough.
McDonough blew my mind.
If you told me that Ryan McDonough was going to be
blew my
gone
mind
by 2018, I wouldn't have believed you. But things happen. Things happen.
No, they were worried about his next contract.
But Callahan, that was also the thing with JT Miller too, right? We don't want to pay him on his next contract. We don't pay him.
But here's the crazy part about it. This is who you've invested in and drafted.
Yeah.
Right? These guys you brought up. And this is what they did for a while.
Well, you know what?
And then when a free agent came, it was overpayment, and you'd nickel and dime the guys that are sitting there every day.
That was the issue.
And the players knew that.
Yeah.
Or they felt that, whether it's true or not. That's exactly what we thought, and that's what I still think. I don't think they're doing that now. I'm saying that I still think that's what happened then.
That is what happened.
Yeah. And it's kind of like guys signed deals that were below market value to stay. That's how, and we might not have been on paper the most talented team, but we got a lot out of those, those 3-4 years because it was about all of us.
Well, what's fascinating is when you take a look at all of the younger forwards who came up, who were drafted, that Kreis is the only guy who made it like to the third or fourth contract. Was the only guy who made it past. Like Dubinsky didn't, Callahan didn't,
Anisimov
did, Artie, you just player after player, and it was Chris Kreider. Chris Kreider is the one who made it through, who made it into the 30s. None of them played into their 30s. None of them made it to the age of 33.
Not without drama too, though. With Kreis, like that last deal he signed, it was like, is he staying? Are they trading him? Is he staying?
Right.
And they were at a different place. They were at a different place then.
Yeah, they were at a different place. But he also he had a great 6 weeks leading up to the deadline when he signed. He did. I mean, and I remember, getting texts at night from an agent with dollar signs on it after he'd scored 2 goals. But really, they had to make the decision then whether they were going to keep Kreider or Brady Shea. They weren't going to be able to fit them both under the cap the next year. So they were going to have to move one of them at the deadline, and they wound up moving Brady.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thankfully, at least we don't have that kind of drama. I feel like going into this stadium series, plenty of trade talk drama will happen later on. We hope that the Rangers do come out with another victory like you guys did, Brian. And I'm going to note here on the podcast, Brian had 2 points in that stadium series. So good on you, Brian. Well, you know what, Larry? Lighten it up, just you guys lit up Marty, which, love to see that. Larry, we appreciate you coming on as always this week. Thanks for the insight. Thanks for the talk. And we'll talk next week. All right.
Sounds good. Yeah.
And now it's time for your boiling point for the week. And now it's time for the boiling point. Ryan, what's boiling your point this week?
All right. Well, for some reason, the kids didn't have school on Monday, and they do some auction to raise money for the school. It's a very small Catholic school my kids go to. I actually went there, and it's a great thing. But one of the auction items was pick your day off for the whole school, and this family bought it for the day after the Super Bowl, which I get. But they have February break next week. So then at 3 p.m. that day that they're not in school, they canceled school for the next day because of a storm. So I don't want to really go that hard on the meteorologists and the weather people, but if your bosses are telling you to make it scarier than it is, I hope we don't meet up in a dark alley at any point. Okay. And for the clowns that are canceling school, what happened to the excitement of waking up? I didn't do my homework last night. And I hope they cancel school. Whatever happened to that? It's gone. You're robbing these kids of that excitement. All these instant dopamine with their video games and I sound like a 90-year-old, but give them something to hope for and wish for. It's hey, we're having lunch. It's go outside because I can't stand you right now. Going crazy in my house because we don't have school for no reason. And then I get the text from the alert system saying no school tomorrow. What the hell are we doing? We live in New England. Everyone has 4-wheel drive. Plan accordingly. Soft. that's my boiling point for the week.
And that'll put a bow on episode 144 of Up in the Blue Seats, our Rangers podcast from the New York Post. Before we get out of here, let's dish out some stars. Brian, just you and me this week, so I'm gonna let you go first.
All right, let's go with Igor. Drowning out the noise, having a little break, getting back to his center. It'll be interesting to see who we pick on next. Rangers fans? No, I'm just kidding. But it is good to see he's solid, rock solid. So a little swag back in his game.
You like to see the swag. That's important. And that actually ties very well into my second star. I'm going to give it to Benny, Benoit Allaire. Again, with his work with Igor and his work with Quickie earlier in the season, this guy, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I want to see a banner in the Garden with Benny's name on it, or at least a plaque somewhere. I mean, the work that he's done with our goalies, God bless him, man. It's amazing. I mean,
wizard.
He is. He gets all the credit that he deserves, but I feel like he should be getting so much more considering how.
Well, look, how hard is it, really quick? How hard is it to have that kind of tenure in a place or any coach, especially when you're not the head, whatever? I mean, a new coach comes in, they bring their guys in. He's the guy. He's the guy.
He is, and it kind of makes you wonder, like why hasn't he been poached by anybody else? I mean, I get it.
Oh,
no,
no, they won't let him leave.
Good.
Give him a little more money. He earned it.
Plus, you're in New York City. Come on now. Where else are you gonna go? Detroit? No. Third star. Just gonna give it to Lavs because Rangers have won 5 in a row. Steering the ship right. There was a lot of noise, prior to these 5 games. What was gonna happen with this team, and it's been a little bit of a roller coaster. We're back on that up dip. So I feel like Lavs deserves that final star. So
Beauty.
I'm gonna give it to him there. All right, so we're going to close it out. As always, many thanks, Jake Brown, for producing the show. Catch up on all episodes of the podcast by subscribing to Up in the Blue Seats on Apple Pods, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching this right now on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, comment below. Are you excited for the Stadium Series? Or what was your favorite Stadium Series game? Are you in the likes of us and say the Phillies game, or the Phillies, the game in Philadelphia was the best one? I personally think it was, even though, you had the shootout BS. But you can follow us all on Twitter. It's at BryBrowse22 and myself at Andrew Harts without the E. Brian Boyle, Larry Brooks. I'm Andrew Harts. Thanks for listening. As always, we will talk to you next week. Stay warm at the Stadium Series if you're going out there. Don't go getting cold and pneumonia and whatever, anything else. We hope to talk next week with the winning streak still intact. Later.